They came up and concocted the story that the IRA has suddenly decided to quit, and we've had a peaceful solution, and it's gone away. And now that's why Lord James of Blackheath could come out and say, I can talk about the IRA because that's gone now, but I can't talk for security reasons about our continued funding of terrorism in the North African terrorists.
I want to get into that now, but why is so much of this starting to leak? Why is Geraldo Rivera now on 2 shows in the last week on Fox saying 9/11 truth may be right, controlled demolition? Why is Beck, in your educated opinion, coming out and saying Obama's people are preparing a new Oklahoma City to be blamed on the Patriots? I mean, this is being authorized by Rupert Murdoch.
I'm not sure it is. This is a tough thing. You know, conspiracy is the weak link. It's why the media denigrates conspiracy theory and facts so vehemently, is because this is the only thing that's capable of blowing wide open the fact that we've got a controlled government, 2 controlled political parties. Glenn Beck has always been on the wrong side of the conspiracy issue because of 9/11. He got on the wrong side early, and he denigrated people who believed in 9/11 conspiracy. Suddenly, it appears that Glenn Beck's starting to turn the corner. You know, I thought to myself, you know, look, his mentor, Glenn Beck's mentor, is my uncle, joel-skousen, who wrote the book on conspiracy, the original one, about...
Literally wrote the book, yeah.
The Naked Capitalist. And how can you have him as a mentor and be denigrating conspiracy? Well, I found out that he couldn't put, or refused to put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, he could believe, and he believes very strongly now, that there is a globalist conspiracy, because that's what's involved with communism and the bigger factor, but he couldn't see it, you know, in front of himself in terms of 9/11 or Oklahoma City bombing, some of those other aspects. And now he's starting to believe it. I'm not sure he can come clean and admit that he was wrong on television, but he clearly now believes in conspiracy, and I think it's moving that way. And the same thing with Rivera. He's turning the corner, and they haven't shut him down yet, and that may well happen yet.
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to talk about it because I don't give up sources, but when we get back, I've got something brief to say about that, because I got a lot of moles, a lot of feelers out there, and Glenn Beck's got big torpedoes coming his way, big ones. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You were telling us about Glenn Beck and what you felt was going to go on there.
Well, I don't feel it, unfortunately, and in fact, I wish, Joel, because I wasn't clear. I mean, I wish it was just my feelings or my speculation. A very high-powered reporter, and I'm going to leave it at that, told me, you know what, I said I wouldn't say anything, but I didn't say I wouldn't say something's coming after Glenn Beck. Sometime in December, it may be January, but probably December, there's going to be a huge group of information breaking about Glenn Beck. You've noticed he's been saying something big's about to come out, so I can talk about it because he knows. He doesn't know the full extent, though, from what I've been told by a very good source. He said, you know, bad things are about to come out, they're not true. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think if it is true, the system knew he had problems from the beginning, things that are even worse than we know, the drugs and the rest of it, and so they built him up as the figurehead of this movement to then try to discredit it. I don't think that's going to work, but you talking about them coming after him, that's what spurred me to say, yeah, you're right. What's your take on that, joel-skousen?
Well, I have long suspected that. I don't have the sources that you have quoted, but I just have had a gut feeling that they're not, the sooner and the closer the Glenn Beck gets to the truth about the major issue of powerful forces controlling our government, powerful forces controlling both political parties, the sooner he is to the hatchet. That they cannot. He's so effective, even in his bumbling way. You know, he's uncareful in many regards, which does make him vulnerable. But he's so effective because of that disarming nature that he has when he speaks and he talks to people. I just have felt for a long time they can't continue to let this happen.
Well, my issue is, you know, he represents, whether it's true or not, a lot of the liberty movement, the awakening, and I just hope the things I've heard, and And again, this was from a high-powered reporter. I mean, this is from as big as it gets. And you know, as I reach more people and become more prominent, I get these sources. And this, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to give out any information. Glenn-Beck already knows about it. He already knows about, well, that's it. I'm shutting up now. It's just that Glenn-Beck better get ready. He better get ready. I hope this stuff isn't true, but he better get ready because it's real. And it is going to be crippling at the bare minimum. I will say this, you know, 3 months ago, I say, talk about poison in the water, talk about eugenics. He does it. I say, talk about the real puppet masters 2 weeks ago, not just George Soros. He comes out last week and talks about David Rockefeller and how robber barons are not free market and want socialism. So it does seem like just a few months ago he seemed disingenuous. More and more, I think he realizes that his time may be limited, Joel.
Well, and this, if this does come to pass, then I think it's only a matter of time. Whether they fabricate something or they blow something out of proportion, or even if it's true, he's going to know for sure, after being targeted himself, that there's a major conspiracy to shut down the truth in this country. And what he does with it afterwards remains to be seen. You know, if they throw him off that network, I am sure there are other networks, even your own, that might pick him up or that might help him out, and he could continue to have a voice.
Well, the guy's worth like $150 million. He can start his own network.
That's right. He does have the money. He's got a tremendous amount of money. And there are some other struggling networks, you know, even smaller than yours, that can use a boost, and he could give them that boost. And he could instantly take any network to the top if he becomes the major player.
Well, you know, again, I don't think it should be about the personal things that a messenger is involved in. It should be about the information. But the system wants to change the debate, and instead of making it about the message, about the messenger. And I'm done talking about Beck. It's just, it really shook me up what I learned is going on. And it's just... And you know, you'd think at a primitive level, I'd be like, oh, good, he's ripped off my material, he's demonized me, you know, he's done these things in the years past. But I really feel sick, and, well, I'm done talking about it. It just makes me sick.
It's to your credit, Alex, if I could say, though, that, you know, as I've seen the competition and the back and forth going on, it's to your credit you've accepted the good things that Glenn-Beck does. You know, I was a very strong critic of Glenn-Beck when he started, especially when he denigrated conspiracy so strongly. But I, too, have had to acknowledge that Glenn-Beck has done a great deal of good for the movement, and that the powers that be cannot stand that for long, and that's why we're all eventually targeted, but especially those that get to have a strong forefront like Glenn-Beck has done.
Well, I agree with you, though. I think he's really going to find out just how ruthless these people are. And I just thank God every day that I don't have any real skeletons in my closet. What, I got in fights and beat people up pretty bad when they started fights with me? What, I smoked marijuana a couple times? I mean, thank God I've had a pretty clean life. But I have to tell my wife, I go, you know, it doesn't matter. They still might manufacture something. I mean, this could be totally manufactured, what they're about to do to him.
Well, you know, that's the interesting thing about the story about Lord James that comes out. The things that he said, for example, this is a quote, he said, I found myself between a rock and a hard place, that they were totally paranoid about each other. He's talking about Foundation X and the Bank of England. Now, we tend to think of these things as totally unanimous organizations, that there's absolute control between them, but they're not. They're competing power structures even within the powers that be. He says the Foundation X people are super obsessed about their own security. They expect to be contacted only by someone equal to heads of state or someone with international security rating, Henry Kissinger and above, top 6 people in the world.
By the way, let me stop you. You're quoting him, and I'm not going to play the whole 12-minute video, but it's up on Infowars.com. It's been up there for a few weeks. Let's put it back on screen for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. If folks want to go watch this on YouTube, it's only got like 9,000 views. It should have 10 million views. It's Lord James of Black Heath speaks of Foundation X. Here he is talking about Bilderberg Group level. That's what Foundation X is, folks. Here he is talking about Henry Kissinger, world government, secretive groups, governments funding terrorists. And again, you can just search that on YouTube and pull it up. Lord James of Black Heath speaks of Foundation X. And that's my next question, Joel. clearly, and Bob Chapman and others agree with me on this, I want to see if you agree, the globalists are getting into this final phase. There's always been fissures. There's always been infighting over the levers of power. But now that's being accelerated, accentuated, because in the final phases of consolidation, things are getting more and more hectic, more and more dangerous. A lot of people inside the system are starting to balk when they really see what's being built. A lot of people in government don't want to allow, this nuking of the United States.
There is a lot of truth to that because, as I pointed out in my book, Strategic Relocation, where I put out my major theory about how a conspiracy of power works in the various different levels, they don't tell, there aren't thousands of people that know the whole plan. There are an awful lot of people at the lower levels who are predictable yes men, who are predictable liberals, who are soft brain people, or people who are just greedy for political or financial power that don't know what the full plan is of destruction, of killing of billions of people through biological and chemical warfare, of nuclear war. They don't know, and they're starting to find out, and they're balking. Now, that's why I believe the Foundation X is not one of the organizations that we normally know about. It's not Committee of 300. It's not Bilderberger. It's not Aspen Institute. It's not Trilaterals, although they're part of it. I'm saying I think the very top levels keep themselves out of those visible organizations, and that's why they're paranoid, as he said, about their security. And they
sure, but they've got representatives in all those key meetings.
Absolutely. These people all work for them, but not necessarily all in a unanimous team. I think sometimes they feed different power groups and power sub-leaders who have their own power.
Sure, they're steering things. They don't have total control. They're able to steer. So from your deep research, tell us who's at the top. From my research, it's Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Sachs, Coburg, Gothas, the British and Dutch royalty. I mean, it's really the robber baron families.
Yeah, it is. I think, you've got to remember that there's movement also in these hierarchies. There's people who die off and people who replace them. I'm convinced that Henry Kissinger has moved up into the top levels now.
Yes, because people die, and then only a few people know where all the bodies are buried.
That's right. That's right. I think George Soros has moved up to the top. I think Dwayne Andreas, was there. None of us are ever going to know completely. And in fact, it isn't necessary to even know who it is. We have to teach people to watch the power structure at work. Just like Chuck Baldwin said one time, he said, I don't know if the Antichrist is a person or an organization. It doesn't make any difference. All I do know, he said, is that it is going to have an effect. It's targeting us, our liberty, and our lives, and that's what we need to be careful of.
Very well said. In closing, Joel, and things are moving so quick, I want to have you back up very, very soon. Any other points you want to add about what's happening in our world? Do you think it's overall a positive thing that we are rebelling against the TSA and the people are learning the power that they do have?
Absolutely. The great positive is that the more, ultimately there are those who understand and who acquiesce, and those who understand that there is conspiracy and will not acquiesce. And we are starting to see stronger people come out, especially against TSA, and say, we're not going to take this anymore, and they really mean it. We're not going to fly, like Jesse Ventura says. We're not going to, stand for this. And I think that builds confidence in other people to take a stand. That's what I worried about so much in this movement, is that there were a lot of people who felt and agreed with us, but weren't willing to take a stand someday and actually stand up against it with force of arms if necessary.
Well, I want to quantify that and then have you elaborate briefly, because we're almost out of time. There's a greater risk in not getting in the game. There's a greater risk in being passive and sitting on the bench. That assures the victory of these eugenics control freaks. People think I have courage. I don't have courage. I'm doing this because I've studied history, and I know these tyrants have got to be met head on, because if they succeed, then our destruction and enslavement is assured. The only way out is standing up, ladies and gentlemen. Joel, your comments on that statement.
That's exactly right. One thing I learned from the statements of Lord James was this. He estimated that almost half of the House of Lords already knew about this foundation, and that it was a new thing to him. Now and the same thing with this guy in the City of London. Remember, he was the only one out of the 30 or 40 people he regularly met with, high financiers who didn't know about the system.